What an opportunity, what a privilege it is to have Sandrine Monin on this world, on this planet. Sandrine Monin is an exceptional person. Yes, I'm the one with the unruly hair, and I love it. I love it. I had so many years being told to have my hair cut short, and I don't want that. So my name's Helen. I am getting to late middle age, believe it or not. And I hugely value everybody that's here, everybody that's online. Thank you to all of the technicians, everybody, the producer that's here. Because we are a tiny, tiny company. A tiny company. And we're still learning. I know there are over 2 million people living in the UK with some visual impairment, some partial sight. I know there are 340,000 people that have registered or have been registered as being registered blind or registered partial sight. That is a choice. So there are going to be many thousands more. I know in my own local authority there are more than 3,000 blind or partially sighted people on the Bradford Register. We're new. And when I first fell in love with this process was in November 22. And I received a telephone call from Simon Labette, who was a rehabilitation officer at Morley Street, so for Bradford Adult Services, to support people who have never had sight or have lost sight through accident, through illness, you name it. There's hundreds of different reasons why people live with partial sight. Some people say they live with sight loss. Some people say they are partially sighted. I actually say I'm registered blind, and then people will say, well, you can see a little bit, and I can see a little bit, but I can only see 3 degrees out of 120. And what we're to remember is that sight loss is unique, or partial sight, or somebody's vision is unique to them. My sister has the same diagnosis as me, and I know there's at least one other person in the audience with the same diagnosis of retinitis pigmentosa. It's pigmentation growing on the retina from the outside in. So it's very central tunnel vision, no peripheral vision whatsoever. And that restricted vision, that residual vision that's still left, is greatly impacted on by light. So when there's too much light, it takes all the vision I've got. When I'm out in the dark, it takes all the vision I've got. What we're to remember is the vision is unique to the person. I know my friend, my sister, same diagnosis, but we all see different things. And we can't all be treated the same because we're not all the same. What I have learned over the years, because I was registered blind in 2001, and it was a real shock. And I only really did it because I was so frightened that I couldn't do my job well enough. I was a deputy manager looking after young people leaving care. And I knew that I possibly couldn't give a clear description of what the young people were leaving when they were last seen. So I plucked up courage to go to Leeds General Infirmary, 21st of November, 2001, 2:30, and I was seen by an expert in ophthalmology, Mr. Woon at Leeds. And he said, after looking in my eyes for not very long, I can register you're partially sighted, but you're really blind. And it was the first time I'd been told that, because my mum and dad decided not to tell me and my sister that we were going to lose our sight. That was their decision. So it was a heck of a shock on that day when the diagnosis was given to me, and I said, well, what's the benefit of being registered blind? Oh, half-price television licence, bus pass, blue badges, yeah. But it's a massive label. And then to live with that, after years and years of being frightened, I remember coming into Leeds, my city of birth. I would get off a bus where I knew there would be a big issue seller selling magazines, and I would buy a magazine and I would roll it up in front of me and walk round with it hesitantly. It didn't stop me falling downstairs. It didn't protect me up here. But I knew if I was holding it in front of me, I wouldn't bump into somebody. My biggest fear is hurting anybody, unless I'm playing rugby. Unless it's, 6 of one and half a dozen of another. But what the dance has helped me understand is, and I think when I'd been registered blind on that day, I was with somebody that's in the audience now, and we were really, really shocked. Had no support. The expert in diagnosing the disease, I'd never seen him again. But I'm the expert at living with it. When I first met Sandrine in November 22, after taking up on the request from Simon Lebet to go and get involved in a workshop for blind people dancing, I said to Elizabeth, she's in the audience, I said, oh, it's going to be line dancing. Don't really want to do that. Don't want to do that with a load of blind people. It's not what I do. Or Morris dancing or anything. But Liz said, oh, come on, we'll go. And we did. And it's honestly helped every aspect of my life and my understanding of things that I thought I already knew. Because on the very first day, met Sandrine, and I said, what is it we're doing? And she sat on the floor and read to 4 of us, 4 different people that she'd never met before, and explained what her dream was and how the work she'd done in London before coming here, the working with the composer, the working with Maria, the professor with the sound. And I said, well, who's funding it? And she said, the Arts Council. I thought, oh my word, this is big. This is something completely different. And then in that very first session, Sandrine asked myself and the other participants if we wanted to, if we could, close our eyes. And I did. And because of the setting, because of Sandrine's voice, because of her guidance, I knew I would be safe in that room. I was very aware of not moving around and bumping into other people. But when you're asked or given permission to close your eyes and not see at all, it reinforces it's not about what you can see. It's not about what you can't see. It's about the dance, and it's really about the dance. And those of you that know me know I can entertain people. From a very adapted childhood. My sister's saying yes. But this is different, because this isn't about entertaining people. This is about me giving myself permission to be me. Thank you, sister. But there's so much that's got to be in place. And you know from the guest speakers today that we are mirroring trauma-informed practice, and trauma-informed practice looks at trust. We've spoken, everybody's mentioned trust. We speak about collaboration. That's us all working together, acknowledging that we're all uniquely different, but we have to challenge each other. Sandrine and I really had a little bit of a head-to-head today, but it had to happen because I'm too old and long in the tooth not to do what I say is doing on the tin. It has to be ethical, it has to be moral, it has to be compassionate. because we're inviting people in their most vulnerable state to come and dance. If you can imagine leaving your house with your eyes shut, finding your way to a bus stop, getting on a bus, getting into Leeds to the busyness of the bus station, waiting for friends, then navigating the 3 roads by the playhouse. We do it in tandem now. There's 3 of us that do it. Thank you so much for mentioning the social model of disability up there earlier. The social model of disability was developed in the 1980s, and still people don't know about it. The massive amount of work that is done by disabled people who still feel as though they're not listened to. We have to listen. It's the root of trust. It's the root of safety. It's the root of choice and control. Having those sonic sound little bits, really, truthfully, they have worked every time we have rehearsed. But Maria confirmed and said she thinks that they're very sensitive to stress. So if you notice when I was dancing, I didn't actually feel stressed, but I had been stressed before that because it's anxiety raising, but it stopped. But I knew to keep going because I knew it would come back on, because we're in a safe environment. We trust each other and you can't get anything wrong. When you're living in a fully sighted world, as somebody with impaired vision, partial sight, blindness, whichever terminology you want to choose, there's a constant fear of being wrong. There's a constant fear of anticipating what you're supposed to be doing. When Sandrine spoke about the neck, the top of the back in the neck and the head, and the movement that we are getting our bodies into because we're becoming more body conscious and body movement conscious, that really frees up the heavy head. Because if you live with sight loss or blindness or visual impairment, you're anticipating all the time. So you're crunching your shoulders. How many knots have you got in your shoulders, sister? Lots, lots. It's huge. But this dance, it's not about what you can see. It's not about what you can't see. It's about the dance, and we are brand new. We know we have got so much more to learn. And I said to Sandrine right at the start, not all blind or partially sighted people come in neat packages. We all are here today. The thing we've got in common today is that we're interested in the launch of Unbound Dance Theatre. Everything else about us is uniquely different. We've all had a different history. We've all got a different background. We've all got different DNA. We've all got a different psychology, a way of coping. But I know what dance is embedded in me deeply is that hope is so much stronger than fear. And if we have that and understand that and accept people and listen to people and have empathy and have compassion, we will be able to do our bit. We can't take over the world. We're tiny. We're reliant on funding. We're reliant on a lot of time when nobody's getting paid to do it. But our intention is to be inclusive, listen to people's lived experiences and learn. And I feel very proud of being part of that. And I can't tell you how proud I am of Sandrine Monin, because she's something else. And she has created all of this. And already, she thinks I'm cheesy sometimes, but she has helped so many people change their lives and have that opportunity to be free, to not be worried about making a mistake. to make those choices, to stand together and have a sense of belonging and a sense of community. So thank you, Sandrine. Any questions because the wardrobe's open?
Thank you, Helen. Just like what she said, any questions?
What we mustn't ever do is underestimate or not listen to somebody's lived experience. It's theirs. A new word that I've learned in dance is having your own agency, and that is embodied in the way you move, the ability to move. And I know that some people already accessing Unbound Dance Theatre maybe in a wheelchair, maybe have learning disabilities. It's not exclusive to blind and sight loss, because nobody comes in a neat package. Any questions, please?
My question, I think, is about what you were talking when you described the physicality that you tend to create in order to protect yourself, and, you know, very rightly, because and I'm just wondering if all this adventure with Sandrine and having the safety that you described, moving, did that translate to outside the studio, outside dancing, or was it just more of like a release of the tension that you usually have? And just, I'm more interested, I guess, about that area.
It's a really, really good question, because internally, I'm just a bag of nerves, but I hide it really well with the mask. Internally, I'm full of fear, full of messages that I'm always wrong. And all I really want to do is be right and be kind and be compassionate. So I think the dance has certainly helped me to understand myself, be kinder to myself, give myself a little bit more praise. And you know, it also helped me deal with a lot of those awful messages from childhood. And it helped me accept them and have empathy for them. Very difficult as a child who wasn't told that they were losing their sight to try and be part of a class of children who could read the board, who could read the book. So I adapted my behaviour and was the class clown, which wasn't easy when my mother was the dinner lady on the PTA and my dad was a senior policeman. Not good. But the dance has given me the opportunity to not be adapted. And I also believe it's given me the confidence to engage on a different level of bravery. And that's because I'm more aware of who I am and less worried about making a mistake. So it's an emotional change, it's a mental change, and it's certainly a physical change. And the only bit that's isolating about it is because we're still so new, difficult to describe it to my friends who've seen me clear dance floors at discos and carnage. Because it's not that anymore. So it's changed on every level. And it meets my intellectual need as well. And that shared compassion to learn from each other, to hold each other, I mean, the piece I've just done with Tammy was incredibly brave for both of us. She's been dancing for 15 years, probably more. And her style of dance is really quite liquid. And so for me to move and allow myself to touch her after working with adults and children in social care has been a massive risk for me. But to learn how to move and how a body can move when it's not just holding on to a white cane, trying to navigate somewhere, or holding on to a guide dog trying to get somewhere, but to have that freedom and dance with somebody in quite an intimate setting is incredible, and it kind of fulfills all of that need for belonging and understanding people and caring about people and choosing to be single.
Thank you so much for your generous.
Any other questions, Tammy?
Just a really quick comment on the physicality of, dance and visually impaired, and my experience as well. Like moving through the world without sight, I can only imagine it. Obviously, I am a sighted person, but I can see it through Helen, through working with Helen, that, at the start, it's like she's taking her steps like really carefully. She's like really stepping her steps. But through moving in a studio, in a more safe environment and in a more creative setting, it kind of opened more options to how she is able to move, and that kind of translates into her everyday life, moving through, your everyday environments. And that really shows, because she is now, you saw her like roaming around the studio, and also outside the studio as well, maybe in a more kind of safer manner. But I think what dance I don't want to use like dance as a tool, so to say, as like, oh, dance, for health, yay. But also like how we show up there to dance, but also how dance show up for us, is to open more options. And that really is integrated. It's not just like in the studio and in everyday life.
Because, is this still on? It's been a massive learning curve for the professional contemporary dancers that we're dancing with. And that's where we've had the collaboration and the equality, because we're all new to it. And I think one of the things that I can definitely determine is that through being part of this dance, it's helped. I've always been resilient, I've always had to be. And resilience isn't a given thing. Resilience is typically the ability to bounce back, and some days it's very hard to bounce back. But I think, when Tammy said dance isn't a tool, I think being part of the dance has opened a whole new toolbox to me to develop a completely different level of resilience. And that's huge. That's absolutely massive.
Thank you. There is some online question.
Hi, Helen. The question online here is, what does the presence of audience do to your experience of dancing?
I'm not actually bothered they're there now, because it's not. Yes, I want to showcase what we're doing, and I want people to know what we can do and all of that. But suddenly it's not about performance. For me, it's about being in the dance. It's about using that space and that permission to feel free, to feel powerful, to feel relaxed, to feel the real deep inner bits of me that are so tightly condensed in the rest of the time. So, was I nervous knowing people were coming? Yeah, only because I want people I know and people that I don't know to understand what we are aiming to do. And what we want to do is ethical and moral and be meaningful for people. So that's the only bit. But now I don't need to dance to perform.